Good morning, everyone. This is Kathy Mason from Mason Works Marketing here on Conscious Business Zone with Kelvin Chin. Hi, Kelvin.
Hey, how you doing?
Great, great. So I am so excited to introduce you to Kelvin. I met him last year at the IANDS conference in Philadelphia, where he was talking about his amazing experiences that he can share with you to make your life so much better. So Kelvin, okay, where do we want to start? I want to ask about your book to start.
Okay.
because
Sure.
because Kelvin has a book. Let me grab it and make sure I say the name right. He wrote a book called Overcoming the Fear of Death through each of the four main belief systems. And
Right.
I watched a lecture that you gave in San Francisco last night
Mm-hmm.
of you talking about it. It's fascinating. Could you share a little bit about
Sure.
your experience?
Sure. So you probably saw the lecture maybe I gave in at the Commonwealth Club in San Francisco.
Yeah, you were dressed up nice.
Yeah. I had my double-breasted suit
Yeah.
on. Yeah, the Commonwealth Club, for those people who don't know, just a quick aside on that, it's been around since 1903, and
Wow.
it was opened by Teddy Roosevelt when he was president.
Oh,
Gave the opening speech there and so forth. And they have different groups and so forth. So I spoke in the humanities section about my book. Here's my book. This is, in case people are curious, this is what it looks like, Overcoming the Fear of Death.
perfect.
And it's available online on, all the places online, Amazon and Barnes and Noble, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, so my book is, when you read the title and it says, through each of the four main belief systems, those are not religious beliefs. So first of all, right off the bat, just to be clear, it's not a religious approach to helping people with overcoming the fear of death. It's a non-religious approach, actually. And I just started working with somebody in my 42nd country the other day. So I work across cultures, obviously, and across religions. Doesn't matter what religion. It doesn't matter if a person is religious or not religious. They could be atheists or agnostics. It doesn't matter. So I started thinking about this when my mom died, when I was young and she was young, in the early 1980s. And that's when I started thinking about death and dying more, very much more personally, quite frankly. She and I were very close, and it was very, well, it was emotionally and psychologically and psychically shocking for me. That's just to kind of sum it all up in one phrase, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, that was the first time that I really had to deal with death and dying on a very personal level. I mean, my grandfather had died, and, another relative had died, so forth. But, I was close to him, but not close to like my mom.
Right.
So that was like the watershed moment for me personally. And so I started talking to people and, and it just friends. I was in school and so forth at the time. And they would start opening up, and they would open up when I opened up, and they opened up. And then I started seeing what worked and what didn't work, what made me feel better and what made them feel better, and what worked and didn't work, just trial and error. I didn't have any training on this. I was in life school at the time, I was in graduate school, I was in law school, but I was in life school.
How old were you about?
I was 30, 29, 30. Okay. And my mom was 50. And she was gone very quickly, died very, very, very quickly. And not quite like in a car accident gone, but illness very quick, almost the same time period. And anyway, I started seeing that there was a way to talk to people, perhaps, that didn't step on people's religious or cultural toes.
Perfect.
That's why I came up with this 4 belief systems. So basically, here they are real quick. The first one is science belief. No afterlife. That's it. One life. I talk about it in my book. My dad had that.
Yeah.
My dad had that belief system, right? You heard me talk about that in the lecture at the Commonwealth Club. Um, you're referencing a video, just so people understand. I wasn't at the Commonwealth Club last night in San Francisco. I'm in Los Angeles. We can't travel. Okay, I'm not traveling.
I just wanted to make sure that I did my best to help people understand your gifts. So that's
yeah. No, appreciate it. But just to be crystal clear, I am not traveling right now. I am acknowledging the COVID situation. But so the first belief system is science belief, no afterlife. Second belief system that exists in the world is, I call it the fear of continued existence. So they believe in an afterlife, but there may be fear for various reasons associated with that. Third belief system, belief in an afterlife, no fear, may even be looking forward to it. Fourth belief system in the world, reincarnation, past lives, believe that if you want to, you can come back, or otherwise you can stay on the other side, or you can reincarnate into a different physical body and have another lifetime. So that's the fourth. Everybody in the world falls somewhere there. So I tried to come up with something that would underlie and support all the religious and cultural beliefs, so people could talk about something that was common, as opposed to getting into arguments about who's right and who's wrong.
right.
And so I've done trainings with healthcare workers and so forth to help them understand how to talk to their clients, their patients, and so forth, without stepping on their toes, because it's not about your belief system, it's about who you're trying to help, for example.
Right. Well, and this COVID situation, which has changed so many conferences and so many functions, has really brought up that first wave anyway, brought up the fear of death. That brought up your, well, this may be it
Yes.
kind of feeling. And I think it's a wonderful opportunity for this discussion right now, because it'll really support people processing that fear and maybe changing it to something that's better for them.
Yeah, no, exactly. Yeah, I was interviewed recently by my law school alumni magazine at Boston College, and then they put it out, the interview out to all the alumni in all the Boston, the nursing school, the professional schools, the undergraduates, the business school, everybody. They put the interview out to everybody, and then I recently got contacted by the editor of the AARP newsletter, who is a BC Boston College alum, and she asked me to be. So I was just featured and interviewed about my work there. So yeah, it's very present on people's mind, this kind of work, and helping people deal with anxiety and so forth, and death and dying.
Well, and you're so articulate about the way that you share the information, so it's really easy to digest and doesn't create the fear. I mean, it's almost like you bring up these words and automatically people shut down. But
Yeah.
You're a grief recovery expert. You're certified grief recovery expert. What does that mean?
So I have been trained in grief recovery, is what that means. And so, first of all, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a psychotherapist, but I have been trained, as you say, certified in grief recovery, and I do work in death and dying, and I've been teaching meditation for 47 years also. So, but the grief recovery part, I help people recover from whatever the loss that they have experienced. So very often it could be a loss of a loved one, of course, but it could be any loss. Divorce. I have helped people with major financial losses. These are all grieving experiences. There's 40-something different possible sources of grief. I mean, moving across country, especially for children, but anybody, you lose the familiarity of where you used to live, and you can grieve over that as well. But grief, basically, real quick on the grief definition, I think that it's very much misunderstood worldwide, in cross culture. It's not just here in the United States. And most people incorrectly, directly associate grieving with sadness. And it is related to sadness, but it's not the same as sadness. So I define grief in two different with two different parts. One is the overwhelming sadness. So yes, it's not good to be overwhelmed and paralyzed by the sadness of a loss of whatever. Let's just talk about loss of loved one, because that's, you know, what most people are familiar with, although they could experience all those many other losses. Overwhelming, it's the overwhelming part. It's not the sadness part. So you know, I'm still sad about my mom dying. You know, it was like 38 years ago, 1982.
Yep.
The sadness doesn't go away. You know, that's directly proportional, I think, to the depth of the relationship and the love you have with the person. So
Right.
that's a mistake. When you hear people say, "Oh, you'll get over it," that's a mistake. You don't get over the sadness, but the overwhelming, the paralytic part, yes, I can help people get over that. Now, the second part of grieving is the conflicting feelings that come along with the loss. There's very often conflicting feelings. You'll feel this way, you feel that way. And quick example, like with my mom, she would tell me, "Do not come visit me at the hospital. I'm dying. Just, you need to study. You waste your time coming." So do I go? Do I not go? And then when I would go, and she said, I would bring my books, and it'd sit next to her dying in the bed. And she'd say, "Go down to the chapel and study. Just, you're wasting your time here." And so after she died, I'm like, should I have gone? Should I have not listened to her? Should I have gone more? Should I have not gone down to the chapel? All these conflicting feelings, right? And then the sadness was just immense at the time, but I don't have I'm not paralyzed by the sadness anymore.
Right.
And the conflicting feelings I've recovered from. So that's what grief recovery really.
That makes sense. So people can still function.
Yes.
And use it. Well, it's almost the fear of change anyway. I mean, that's a big roadblock for most people.
It is.
Especially if they don't want the change.
Yes, and you cannot force people to change. They need to want to change. There needs to be at least, I call it, at least a glimmer of curiosity. If there's a glimmer of curiosity there's a slight expression of need. I am not into selling and persuading people to do something they don't want to do, or they don't want to change and think about it. They have to want it and seem some need.
Yeah, I work with a lot of change agents, and I just think, you know, there's people that are fearless about it.
Yeah.
And they can help guide other people, which obviously you must be, that you can help guide people, hold their hand as they process it. And a lot of times, you know, you just need someone to validate and hold you accountable.
Sure.
So, oh, great. Jacqueline Arnold is here. She says, "Congratulations, Kathy. Kelvin is very, very helpful to many people, especially now." And Sheila Gale, hi Sheila. Sheila, we're getting to talk about we're about to talk about spiritually transformative experiences. So stay tuned, please. Oh no, Kelvin heard that. Okay, so so Kelvin, I have not had a near-death experience that I know of.
Yeah.
But I have had many STEs.
Yeah.
And that is why I was so attracted and am so attracted to the IANDS, the International Association for Near-Death Studies group,
right.
Because I feel that I can relate to what they've experienced. Because once you've had an experience that is that big, it's a life-defining perspective change. Once you've had a spiritually transformative experience. And you almost drowned at age 19, and then did you have a near-death experience?
Yes. My experience then, so I've had all of the above, right? I've had, I don't know, thousands of spiritually transformative experiences. And I've had one NDE, one near-death experience. Like I was 19, 20 years old, as you say. But my near-death experience, which I write about them in my book, was different from, it was similar and different. There's a wide range of near-death experiences, quite frankly.
Yep.
I'll describe mine in a second, but I think mine was different because I'd already been meditating for 2 years before I had my near-death experience. So I learned to meditate when I was a teenager. So what did that do? This, in simple terms, the meditation experience of daily, twice-a-day meditation made the experience very familiar to me, that my mind and my body were separate. Yes, they influence each other. We know that, but they're not identical.
Right.
And so my experience when I had almost drowned was different. So here's what happened briefly was I was swimming. I'd never been to the West Coast. I grew up in Boston, suburb of Boston, was going to school at Dartmouth up in New Hampshire. I'd never been to the West Coast. I went to the West Coast, to San Diego, UCSD, University of California, San Diego, for a summer intense language program that was going to accelerate me, give me a year's worth in like 8 weeks.
Wow.
And so I went to UCSD and for the summer program, and I met a young girl. I was a young guy, I met another college student there. In the registration line, we found out, we're taking the same language program. Oh, cool. Oh, you're from the East Coast too. Oh, you've never been to the beach out here either. Okay, let's go to the beach together, because the campus, you literally walk down the driveway from UCSD and you're at this beach. Beautiful. Nobody there but the two of us. Beautiful. 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Nobody there. Wow. June day. And we go out and unbeknownst to us, because we're not from the West Coast, we don't know what a rip tide is, what a rip current is. And everybody in San Diego knows there's rip currents all around there.
That's why no one was there.
Probably. And so there was this major rip, and people don't know what a rip current is. Basically, it's a river in the ocean. And you can, if you get up high enough, you stand up like 200 feet up above the ocean, you can look down. You can see them. You can see the river in the ocean moving, like snaking through like a snake through the ocean. Well, you can't see it when you're on ground level and you're in the water. You cannot see it. And so we went out in the water, and we were about like hip deep in the water, maybe, or something. And I thought, it's hot, let's dunk. I'm going to dunk underwater. So I lift my feet up. Boom. I got pulled out. And she must have been right on the outside of the rip, because I saw her, and I saw her getting smaller, like really fast. And then there are cliffs here at Torrey Pines Beach. We were at Black's Beach, which is part of Torrey Pines Beach in San Diego, and there are cliffs. There are 300-foot high cliffs. I Wikipedia'd it, and I said, how tall are the cliffs? 300 foot high. And then so I asked a buddy of mine who's a ship captain, navigation, blah blah blah. I said, Cayman. So the 300-foot high cliffs were about 3 inches tall. In about 30, 40 seconds, how far out was I? He said 1.7 miles.
Oh my God, that fast you went from shore to that?
Yeah, in about 30, 40 seconds. 1.7 miles, that fast. But when you're in the rip, you're in the middle of a moving body of water. You don't feel like you're moving in it, because you're not, you're just in it. It's just like being in a car. You don't feel like you're moving, but you look outside, you see you're moving, right? You have relative motion. Just like that.
Wow.
And then so I started swimming in. I got exhausted because I panicked. I forgot all of my Boy Scout training. You're supposed to swim at an angle. Just a life-saving tip to everybody who's listening. You're supposed to swim at an angle to the shore to try to get you out of the rip. Instead, I went right back into the rip, and then because I panicked, and I got exhausted, and I started going down. Just like in the movies, I see the surface of the water. I'm holding my breath, but I can see the surface of the water getting farther away from me. I'm getting exhausted. And then I left my body for a split second. I had this presence of mind. I think the meditation, in retrospect, I wasn't thinking this at the time. I was freaking out. But, in retrospect, I think the meditation saved my life, because I had the presence of mind that I can will myself back into my body, and I can change my thinking about this. This was like split second, I wasn't thinking those thoughts, but this was like the experience, right? And then I willed myself back into my body. I forced myself to the surf, the 2 or 3, 4 feet, whatever, back up to the surface. And I decided, take your time. I just remember that. I remember, take your time. So I like snapped myself out of the panic mode because I was forcing myself to try to hurry, and I get exhausted, and I was exhausted. And so I said, take your time. I said to myself, take your time. So I flipped over my back, realized that wasn't going to work because there were still waves, big enough waves going over my face. I was like, oh, that's not going to work. So I flipped over on my side and I did the side stroke most of the way in so that I keep my head above water, but I was doing an easy stroke that didn't involve me putting my head in the water, risking taking on water, drinking, swallowing water. That was it. So, and I pulled myself to the shore and,
wow.
And I fell asleep. My friend, she was watching me to make sure she didn't lose sight of me. She didn't leave to go to help because it was, it would have taken too long. So she kept her eye on me, and she said it took me about an hour to swim back in. I fell asleep. She said I passed out as soon as I crawled up on shore, like the prehistoric whatevers, and I crawled up and I passed out for about a half an hour, she said. But I left my body. It was an unusual near-death experience. It was not the ones where sometimes people, I've had friends who've gone to the other side. They've talked to Jesus. They've talked to Muhammad. They've talked to different religious leaders, depending on what culture they're from and so forth. Or they see other people and so forth. It wasn't like that type of NDE because there's a huge range of NDEs. There's not one monolithic NDE,
That's why I like IANDS, is that I've learned so much about all the ways people have had experiences. But the reason I asked about NDE and then STE is that I think part of the reason I was really interested in this is I don't have words for what I experienced or what I continue to experience. So a lot of times I'm talking to people or listening to their stories because it helps me come up with words, because so much of it is feelings. It's sensations, feelings, no. It's not something that's easy to articulate in 3D. So that's why I was asking about your experience. So you had this near-death experience, but did you call it that, or you didn't?
I did save myself from drowning. That's what I called it. I didn't know. That's what I called that. I didn't know what an NDE was. I didn't know what STE. I learned to meditate, just to be clear. I learned to meditate when I was a teenager because I was so stressed out. That's why I learned. I didn't learn for spiritual reasons. Right. So I had this experience. So once I started having this regular, kind of what you're describing, this kind of abstract, how do I put words on this? I'm meditating. I experienced myself that, a sense of connection within myself and with all things living and non-living, whatever. I feel this connection. How do you describe that? That's a spiritually transformative experience, basically, kind of this abstract thing that you're trying to get words around, right? And so I've had many of those experiences in the 2 years prior to this almost drowning experience. So I was very familiar with my mind, the different, how expansive my mind could be at times, and how different my conscious focusing part of my mind was from the rest of my mind. It's still a fluid thing. I talk about it in my teaching now. It's fluid. We don't have different parts of our mind. People say, oh, do we have a higher self? I said, well, kind of, sort of, you could say that. But it's fluid. It's not like, oh, I got this part. It's called the higher self. I got this part. It's a conscious mind. We're not like fragmented. Our minds are not like psychotically fragmented. No, our minds are fluid, right? And so I experienced all these different parts of it just in the couple of years I'd been meditating. And that was just the beginning. I've been meditating for 50 years now. So, but, and then I started having spiritual experiences. Then, about 6 years in, I had lots of what you're describing, expansion and connection and all of that. Yeah. But about 6 years in to my meditation, in 1977, 7 years in maybe, I started having past life memories. And so these spontaneously started happening. I used to make fun of people who talked about past lives.
Oh, you were in California. Didn't you expect that?
No, I was back in Boston. I was back in New Hampshire.
Well, in California, that would have been kind of normal. But
I guess in California, I was only in California.
Watch out for this guy.
Yeah, I was only there for 8 weeks though. I went back to the East Coast. So I was only there for summer school. But then, so I'm like back in the East Coast. I'm like, yeah. I used to make fun of people who talk about reincarnation. Yeah, right. And then I started spontaneously having, like, out of the blue. And then in the mid 1980s, I started communicating with the other side. I mean, archangels, angels, and so forth, and then all dead people and so forth. People come talk to me, and then all of that's continued to the present. So now it's like very normal for me. It's not mystical. You know, my whole thing is to demystify the mystical, because it's very normal to me. This has been going on for 40 years for me. You know, it's like, okay, whatever. You know, the veil between this side and the other side is very comfortable, transparent to me. It's not a big deal. You know, yesterday, or was it 2 days ago, I did a session. I teach classes on afterlife and reincarnation, and a 6-part series every 4 months or so. And I'm in the middle of one right now, and all of a sudden the room filled up, and there was like all these people here on the other side, you know, and I got really emotional. You can see it on the video. And anyway, so it's very normal for me, these experiences. So I talk about them in a very normal way. I think they can all be spoken about in a very logical, rational way. I think that one of the things I'm trying to do is show people how you can speak about these experiences that seem very far out to many people, and in the experience of the other side and so forth, that I have had many visits on the other side myself, how we can speak about it in a non-cognitively dissonant way, in a consistent way, logically. We don't need to make these crazy illogical jumps. You know?
Right. Well, see, I just want you to know, Crystal Amber's here, and she says, Kelvin is amazing. I'm so blessed to have him as my meditation teacher.
Oh, that's great.
My life is my meditation teacher. So wanted you to hear that compliment. Well, I think this is what I'm seeing too, is that more and more and more people are being tapped in. I think that was another part of the blessings that we're getting out of this pause before the reset, because the earth is being bathed with plasma from the sun and from our place in the solar system and in the galaxy right now. And so what's happening is there's an opportunity for more and more people to experience their bigger self, not just this third dimensional self. There's all these other dimensions and all these other resources, is what I call it, the archangels, the ascended masters. You and I both know Lilia, so Saint Germain. I mean, there's all these other support systems that humans don't necessarily know to call on, besides Jesus, Buddha, Muhammad. Yeah. Right.
Well, my thing of all that is, regardless of what sources we may get from the other side or this side, it's always about us. We need to filter things. So when I teach, I encourage my students to question everything that I say and everything that anybody else says. Perfect. And whether they're on this side, a friend, even a loved one even, or a professor on this side, or a workshop leader on this side, or spiritual leader on this side, or whether it's somebody from the other side, always question, filter it yourself, decide if it makes sense for you. And does it fit in your life right now, this moment? Because even if it is a truth, it may not be appropriate for you right now. So everybody, we are all free will thinking minds, making our own choices, our personal choices, to define free will. I saw a YouTube video of a very well-respected spiritual teacher out there completely misstating what free will was. Free will means personal choice. That's what free will means. We are all free will thinking minds, consciousness, spirits, souls. All of that, those are synonyms for me. I use the word mind because I teach across so many cultures. I want to use words that are easily understandable. But this person, I've heard him say this, and other people say this sometimes. They'll say, we don't have free will. Everything's predestined. We have free will, because we don't have free will because if I wanted to be a millionaire, I should just be able to think I'm a millionaire and I'm not a millionaire. No, that is not free will, people. Okay, just to be crystal clear, if anybody has ever heard him speak, that is absolutely a misstatement, a misunderstanding of the fundamental principle in the universe of free will. Free will is personal choice. We always have personal choice. Now, we may be in situations we don't like sometimes, but we could choose to be out of that situation, at least consciously, mentally, spiritually, psychically, whichever way works for you, thinking about that. In other words, you could be locked up in prison, not unfairly be there. So people will say, well, what about that situation? Yeah, that could happen. But spiritually, mentally, psychically, you could choose to be not there in a sense from a psychic spiritual standpoint.
Right.
All right. So that's what free will is, and it's about choices people can make. But anyway, I digress.
And that's why this is called Conscious Business Zone, is that people that run conscious businesses have made conscious choices to run their business differently. They either provide a service that helps humanity, or they work differently in their internal workings with their employees.
Yeah.
It's a different way, but you choose, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so I want to ask about everything you do seems to help people become highly functioning.
Yes.
And you're highly functioning. You're a lawyer, and then you own your own company, written books. How do you see this time period, which I'm calling this pause before the reset? I think we are in the dark ages as far as consciousness, and now we have this pause, which allowed to activate people and hopefully go to the Renaissance. That's what I've been saying for about a year now. How do you see this this opportunity right now?
So there's an opportunity here. First of all, let me just say that I take the long view on things. So my memories go back 6,000 years.
Yeah.
So
That's a long view.
What's that?
That's a long view.
That's a long view. My memories go back 2,000 years, and some of the people I talk with on the other side, 10,000 years. So I talk about things in a 5 to 10,000 year window.
Okay.
From my experiences.
Okay.
So I have that. I come from it from that perspective. So if things changed and moved forward somewhat on planet Earth in the last 10,000 years, yes, absolutely. 7 to 10,000 years ago, we were sacrificing women and children because men are stronger, and that was pretty much the norm around the world. That was, more people closer to the equator and so forth and so on. But people had started migrated already. But people were sacrificing. Has it gotten better? Yes. Specifically now with COVID, I think it's causing people to reflect more. Some people, it's still a minority of the population. It's not everybody, because some people are, they want to go to the bars and they just want to party and they just want to. There's always going to be that segment of the population. So, but yes, are people more self-reflective now? Yes, because they have to be, because they're alone. Now, the problem is, and I talked about this in my interview in one of the alumni magazines, is that people are not real comfortable with being with themselves. They're not comfortable with their minds, right? They're just not. And this whole notion of self-love is a great conceptual thing, and I think it's really important. But most people are not in that mode. Most people are not really comfortable within themselves. And so those people you'll find that even with the COVID-19, sequestering and so forth, they'll kind of be more in a runaway mode. They'll just do Netflix binging.
Wow.
They'll when this first COVID thing just happened first few months ago. I don't know if people noticed, but the alcohol, the beer and the wine, that was like stripped out of stores. Okay, so what do you think people are doing? They're escaping. Okay, they're not turning within to connect with themselves like you and I would love them to be. But are they being forced to self-reflect some? Yes. So I see potential incremental changes out of this. Yes. Now, do I see a turnaround of the world, overnight? No.
Oh, well, I was hoping you would.
I'm just trying to be a realist. I don't want to.
Well, I was hoping you would say my meditation classes I have more people wanting to sign up than ever.
They are.
And that I am very hopeful for that we as a species are waking up. I was hoping that.
But you got to understand, I'm looking at it from a 5,000 to 10,000 year view. I've been teaching for 5,000 years. Okay. So am I hopeful? Of course I am. If I hadn't been hopeful, why would I keep doing this for the last 5,000 years? All right. So am I also realistic in that is something going to change immediately overnight and everything's going to be kumbaya and the police system in the United States is going to completely do a 180? No, because we got unions fighting. The police unions are now fighting all the changes that the governors and the mayors are trying to make. Okay. There's a lot of individual free will minds operating here. That's what I'm just saying to everybody. Just continue doing what you want, what you're doing, and to move the needle forward in a positive direction. But I'm just saying, I want people to be realistic, because what happens is, and I've seen this so many times over the last 5,000 years, you see people get discouraged because it didn't work in their lifetime. So I keep coming back, and I keep working on this, because you have to take the long view on this. If you take the short view, in a year, 2 years, you'll stop meditating.
No,
right?
no, I don't think
you're
so.
discouraged because you're discouraged. All right.
Right.
And then the shining light, are now discouraged. How is that going to help the people you're trying to help and move the needle? That's all I'm just saying. Okay.
All I was saying is I didn't think it would be a snap of the fingers, but I guess I'm on the hope train that that 8 billion people wanted to embody, souls wanted to embody right now to be part of this. I mean, I don't know if you believe in ETs, but there's a lot of
I've had lifetimes on other planets.
Yeah, me too. So anyway, so good.
They're they're extraterrestrials in terms of Earth, but so what? Yes, there's another planet
here. But all I was saying is, it seems like there's a lot of support right now for us to make big changes.
Yes.
And I'm being the hopeful side of seeing and trying to illuminate people like you and spotlight people like you that could help other people make these big changes without a lot of fear, without a lot of trauma, without them having to have a near-death experience. They can have a spiritually transformative.
That's right. So my meditation classes have been booked up since the beginning of March. They've been booked up, and they're booked up through July 17th now. So the short answer is yes, the people who are interested are stepping up. So I'm just we don't need. Here's the other realistic approach to all of this, that people who are spiritually oriented need to understand, and what people call the light healers need to understand. You do not need to change 7.6 billion people. All right. You need the positive effect needs to be on a very small percentage of that number, because they have an effect on others and so forth and so on. We're planting seeds. Everybody who's doing positive work in the spiritual community, we'll call it, are planting seeds. That's what I tell people. Somebody asked me in my class on Sunday, she said, what happens after I die? I said, is this, what you're teaching and what you're saying lost? I said, no, I'm planting seeds with you. I said to her, and everybody else. Yeah. We are planting seeds, and we are seed planters. That's the way people need to look at this, because it's not about changing. First of all, you cannot, it's a violation of free will to try to change 7.6 billion people's minds who don't want to change. Just like you said earlier, we can't change people's minds. That's a violation of their free will, okay? Right. But if they're open, those are the people who are signing up for my meditation class, and they're all booked up. I'm all booked up, okay?
Well, so that's why I was calling it illumination, or shining light on, because that's where, if you're aware that you have a choice, you're not in victim mode. Yes. You're not tapped into the global consciousness programming, and you get to choose, then there's a chance, if there's light shown on these different choices, yes, they may find it. So that's what I feel I'm doing.
There are solutions for people. That's the hope message you're talking about. So I help people with death and dying. I have people from 42 countries now. I help people with death and dying issues to help. Why? To help them, as you said, be more functional. The phrase I use is to help them live more fully in the present now. Perfect. Because regardless of past lives, doesn't matter. It's about living life now. Doesn't matter how many reincarnations you may have or not have. It's about living in the present with our loved ones now. How can I help people live their lives more fully? So I do that through teaching meditation in a very easy, effortless way. No concentration, no clearing the mind. None of that. I flip it around. We don't use waking state focusing rules. We use meditation rules in meditation, which means not focus, not concentration, no directing the mind, no clearing the mind of thoughts, no trying to quiet the mind. All of those are misunderstandings or a lack of full understanding about how the mind operates during meditation. It can be very, very easy. So I do that, and then I help people with death and dying issues reduce and in many cases eliminate their fears about death and dying. And then the other segment, I help people increase their understanding about afterlife and what happens in the afterlife, what happens after we die, which is what I'm going to be talking about at the IANDS conference.
Yeah, let's go and talk a little bit about what you're doing at the IANDS event. There is, for everyone that know me, I will be showing a lot of things on my feed and on social media about the Virtual IANDS conference that is coming up in August, the 14th through the 16th. And usually IANDS does their one big fundraiser conference in person, and that's how I met Kelvin last year in Philadelphia. But because of COVID, they had to go virtual, and there's over 60 speakers. It's quite amazing. And Kelvin is a panel. He's on. Are you the moderator, or you're?
No, I'm a panelist on the panel. Yeah.
Okay, you want to talk a little bit about that so they know?
Sure. Yeah. The panel that, well, first of all, the conference goes from August 14th to the 16th, right. 3 days. I'm going to be on the middle day, the Saturday, August 15th at 10 in the morning Pacific time, which is, do the math, it's 1 o'clock Eastern time and so forth. And it's available around the world. My panel is going to be it's called Healing Perspectives on Dying Alone. So what does that mean? Healing perspectives on dying alone. What we're going to talk about is that we don't die alone, that nobody dies alone, that and the reason this panel was created for this particular conference was because we were thinking about COVID-19, and so many people are physically dying alone with the medical staff around them, and they may have their loved one on an iPad or a tablet or a smartphone or something right before they die, but they're not physically in the room with them. So what we wanted to do is talk about this. One of the reasons specifically in this time period is to help alleviate fears, concerns for people so that they can be more comfortable, because that's what I do in all my work, obviously, and that's what the other people on the panelists also are passionate about. And so that we're going to talk explicitly. I'll talk explicitly about what happens after we die, for example. I'll talk about my own experiences, just so people understand. All the teaching that I do comes from my own experiences. It's not from reading books and so forth. I've read very, very few books. I've read a couple of books, but in my lifetime. But I've had to read a lot of books in my lifetime. But I haven't read a lot of spiritually oriented books. They're basically based on my experiences and my memories and being going to the other side, and my experiences on the other side, and my conversations with so many people on the other side, whether they be spiritual leaders on the other side who are now disincarnate, they're in spirit form on the other side, we call it, or just dead loved ones or people I don't know who are dead, and conversations and just me being on the other side sometimes. So I have the ability to go to the other side, to be the other side, to see the other side from this side. So that's the perspective. That's the source, in a sense, of the information that I'll be sharing in that panel.
Perfect. So you will. It's a shame you don't get to speak. You're an incredible speaker, and it's fascinating what you share, because the tools that you have help people be highly functional, and
right.
that whether they have had a lot of experience with meditation or not,
doesn't matter.
It can shift pretty quickly, correct?
Yes, it can shift. So the work I do, sometimes it's in a sense turning within, literally teaching the meditation. Other people, I've talked to them on the phone. I do a free phone session with anybody. It's all done through my nonprofit. And anybody in the world can contact me for free. So after I did that talk at the Commonwealth Club, for example, because Business Insider sent a reporter, and it was in Business Insider, which is such a highly rated, online thing, I became the #1 Google search result for fear of death or anxiety about death for about a year and a half. Now I'm still on the first page, but I was the #1 on the first page.
We can fix that.
Yeah, and so the talk has 30 or 40 or 50,000 views or something like that.
Yeah,
the article. Anyway, so yes, and so I've had people contact me. For example, I do a free session. I'll talk with them. I check in with people. I'll send them a text or an email like a month, 2 months later. So how are you doing? I'm good. After the talk with you, I'm fine. I'm good. My fear went away. So you're right. Something I say, how I say it, because I look at it through their lens. It's not about me. It's about them. I help people help themselves, and it's about what their belief is. So I always ask them. I never tell people, oh, I have had my reincarnation, blah. I don't get into that with people. They may research that and find that out about me.
Yeah.
But, it's publicly available. But I always ask them, they contact me, I say, tell me about what your beliefs are. What do you think happens after we die? And I look at it through their lens, and I help them reduce their fear that way.
Right. Well, you're in service. You can really tell you're in service, and that it just like Crystal wrote on here that feels so blessed to work with you. I'm sure everyone that works with you would feel that way. Well, I want to tell a little bit about this virtual conference.iands.org, because Kelvin is one of many of the amazing speakers that you can sign up to see. It's only $99 to sign up, and again, the website is virtualconference.iands.org. And if you have that experience to listen to these highly competent people that have had these experiences and have touched a different way of looking at humanity, at their own humanity, let's put it that way.
Right.
They're superpowers. So a lot of times their superpowers were activated by these big changes, and that's how they can give and do so much for others. Would you agree with that, Kelvin?
Sure. I mean, I think my message is we all have, you want to call them superpowers.
Yeah.
Can we activate them? Can we access them? You know, can we expand our mind out of what the psychology professor said, this 8-inch plastic bucket part of our mind, which is part of our mind? Can we expand our minds outside of that into the vastness of our mind, the human mind, and then experience the vastness of the universe through that vastness of our individual mind? Yes, we can do that.
Yes, yes. And so I want as many people as possible to know about the conference, to know about Kelvin, and to have the opportunity. And I'm going to put his website back up. It's kelvinchin.org. We'll put it in the description as well. And virtual conference. So Jackie put
no spaces. There's no spaces left. Yeah.
Okay.
So there's no spaces in the
name, not
in the name, in the conference name. Just be careful.
So what's cool is that I'm so glad that IANDS is still doing the event and didn't say, oh, well, we'll just do it next year, because there's so many people that right at this time had the opportunity to meet people like you and see that they can choose better ways of being in the world and really enjoy their life in a whole different way.
Yeah.
And, so Kelvin, is the website's the best way for people to find you, correct? Is there other ways or other?
Yeah. Thanks for asking. Yeah, the website. You go to kelvinchin.org, and then remember the L in my name. It's the Scottish version of Kevin. If people are curious, they haven't seen the name Kelvin before. That you go to the contact page on my website and you just shoot me an email, and then we can connect that way and exchange cell phone numbers and so forth. And they should also subscribe to my YouTube video channel, which is just, you can just type my name in. But the actual, you can search for Kelvin Chin. The actual name of my YouTube channel is Kelvin Chin Turning Within, which is what I call the meditation technique that I teach, turning within meditation.
Like what you have in the background.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. My daughter made this. Thanks for pointing that out. My daughter gave that to me for Father's Day a few days ago. So.
Okay. So Jackie put not just an NDE conference, but a comfort conference.
Yes, it's a great way of thinking about it, Jackie. It's a comfort conference. So even those of you who are not interested in near-death experiences, there's going to be a lot of discussion about other things besides near-death experiences. I mean, the name of the organization happens to have that in it, but my panel, for example, Healing Perspectives on Dying Alone, we're talking about what happens when you die, and I'm going to talk explicitly. I don't know exactly what the other panelists are going to talk about, but I'll tell you what I'm going to talk about. I'm going to talk about explicitly what happens when we die and what's the experience like, and then who comes, all the many different categories of people who come. I'm going to talk about all of that based on my experiences and so forth. It's not just your loved ones. Yes, your loved ones. I'll give you the short preview.
Good.
Your loved ones do come. Definitely, your loved ones come, and nobody ever dies alone. They're in the room with us. When we're dying. I've been at the bedside of many people at the moment they've died. I helped this one woman here. I helped a woman die in England, in London, England. So her daughter held the phone up to her ear. Wow. Her daughter said, it was an interesting story because her daughter said, she Googled, she just searched, and she said, maybe you can help me. I was traveling at the time. This was a couple of years ago. And she said, maybe you can help. The doctors cannot figure out how my mother is still alive. She has so much morphine in her to control her pain. She should be dead 2 weeks ago from the morphine alone.
Oh my gosh.
She should have overdosed on the morphine alone. The doctors can't figure out. And she was starting to pass. And then she rallied over the weekend. And they cannot figure out. Now, she hasn't been able to talk for 2 weeks, but she's opens her eyes up and so forth. She's consciously aware. And all her vitals are like coming back after over the weekend. So the mother, I mean, the daughter contacted me about the mother, and she said, maybe you can help. I said, look, when are you going to see her next? She said, tomorrow. I said, good. You go there, you hold the phone up, you can listen, put speakerphone on, I'll talk to her. I talked to her for 15 minutes. And the woman told me afterwards, the daughter said that after she hung up with me, the woman's in London, England. And she said, Mom beckoned me with her eyes. She can't move. And she whispered one word. She said, beautiful.
Oh.
And she hadn't spoken in 2 weeks. And that was the last word she ever spoke, was beautiful. And she said her mom went to sleep and she slept deeply. And then the next day she went into a coma. And the next day after that, she died.
Wow. So you reassured her that it was safe to go?
I talked to her mom about what's going to happen, et cetera, et cetera. And and so that's what I do. That's what I do. And so I've seen that, I've experienced this. So yes, our loved ones come, because you've been in the hospital. Many people, I'm sure, who will watch this video of our discussion here, Kathy, I'm sure they've seen or been in the room with loved ones where they say, "Oh, I see Grandpa," or there's Uncle Bill, or there's so and so, whatever, you know. And people in the room are going, "What? I don't see anything." It's really important. I always, when I'm training healthcare people, I always say, do not argue with them. It's not about whether you see what they see or not. Reinforce and support what they're seeing, because yes, okay, maybe it's partly the morphine, maybe it's not at all. Right. You don't know. You cannot tell what's in the woman or man's consciousness, in the child's consciousness. You cannot tell. Right. So just acknowledge it. Anyway, people have that experience all the time. But what they don't know is that there are many others come. And there are, I call them workers on the other side. That's their job. They don't know you. They don't know you. But their job is to welcome you and to acclimate you. So there are loved ones, family members, and then there are family members from other lifetimes. That's the reality. So there are so many hundreds and thousands.
So I have one more. Zach, hey Zach, hi. Kathy Botchman's here. Hi, Kath. Zach put, I surf the other side of the veil most of the time for work. I find that explaining concepts that are pre-manifest sometimes involve descriptions using physical entities, example, string theory, that by definition limit the expression of the idea. That's why I don't have words a lot of times. What are some of your favorite metaphors or examples for bringing people closer to understanding the unseen? I'm not going to read the rest of it, but I like glasses. Thanks, Zach. I couldn't read it without it.
I hear what Zach is saying. As I said earlier, my approach is to try to make things as easily understandable as possible. And my experience on the other side, for example, is that he's referring to a time-space issue, I think. So my experience on the other side is that there is time and space on the other side. So when you hear people say there's no time and space after we die, there's no time in heaven, there's no time in the afterlife, that's a conflation, because it's a misunderstanding of the definition of what time is. Time is a measurement of change. So, does change exist on the other side? Yes. Is the experience of time and space on the other side incredibly different from planet Earth? Yes. So I understand why people will come back and they'll say, oh, there's no time on the other side, whatever. There's no space. And yes, there's space. You can see, I can see identifiable energy patterns on the other side. I can identify you, Kathy, on the other side. I don't need to see your physical biological body on the other side.
Right.
I've seen Jesus. I've seen John the Baptist. Jehovah. I can see who they are. They are identifiable energy patterns. Therefore, there is individuality. Therefore, there is space. Therefore, there is change. So time exists, but I tell people in my class, I say, think about it this way. If you physically die, biologically die, and you're on the other side, You don't have a physical, biological body. What are you? Your energy. The mind has continued. The energy has continued, right? First law of thermodynamics, conservation of energy. You know, energy cannot be created or destroyed, okay? So we're continuing. Energy. Well, what do we know on this side? How can we get our minds around this? So maybe this will answer Zach's question in a direct way. How can we get our mind around this idea? Well, energy on this side, well, what's measurable? Light is energy. Light is measurable in terms of the speed of light. We know the speed of light. Here, on this side of the veil, we'll call it, to Zach's point. On this side of the veil, we can measure the speed of light. You know how fast the speed of light is? The speed of light is 692,600,000 and change miles per hour. We'll round that off to 700 million miles per hour.
Okay.
700 million miles per hour is how fast the speed of light is. Now, I don't know how fast we can travel on the other side, but I know we can travel from experience. I know we can travel really fast. Maybe we can only travel 350 million miles per hour. Well, let's just say it's 700 million miles per hour.
Okay.
You know how fast that is? To give people a sense on planet Earth how fast that is. That's 8 times around the equator in 1 second.
Wow.
Now, you can get around the Earth in 1/8 of a second. That's how fast the speed of light is. So maybe we can travel that fast, or a fraction of that. I don't know what. The point is, when you have that kind of what we on Earth would experience as a distorted experience of time and space on the other side, then you have all kinds of theories that arise from this when people come back and they say, well, it seemed like I could be in 2 places at the same time. Well, maybe that's a conflation, I'm saying. Maybe that's actually a conflation, not an accurate. Maybe that's like I can be in one place and I can be another place, a million miles away in a split second. That feels like that's a million miles away. Literally, you could be on the other side traveling in physical space too, right? Because they
but phase shifting for bilocation is essentially instantaneous. Thanks, physics. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't want to get into a physics. Yeah, I don't want to get into a physics thing here, but, because I try to explain these things, to me that these things are logically explainable. I don't want to use theoretical physics, because theoretical physics is theory, and so I want to use from a teaching standpoint. If you want to talk to a quantum mechanics physicist, then talk to a quantum mechanics physicist about the quantum mechanics theories people are using. I suggest that people don't talk to a chiropractor or a endocrinologist or another kind of doctor who's not an expert in quantum mechanics theory about how quantum mechanics theory is being used. But anyway, that's just a suggestion.
Okay.
Because I am not. I have talked to quantum mechanics experts, and I am not one. So I don't want to go there. But anyway.
See, you put LOL. I think what we want to do really is highlight on the gift that you share, so that people can find you as a resource. This is why you're Unconscious Business Zone, and also why you're such a valuable asset for the virtual conference for IANDS this year. And I want to thank you so much for the work you do. You're helping so many people. And I hope that this interview will help more people find you.
Yes, thank you so much for having me on, Kathy. I really appreciate it. And like I said, anybody can contact me for free phone session anywhere in the world about anything.
Okay. And they probably will now. So, well, thank you so much, and I'll see you online on the big screen, I guess, in August. Thank you so much for your support with IANDS and everything you do to help humanity.
Likewise to you. Thank you for what you're doing also, Kathy.
Yeah, thanks. Yep, got to do it. Okay, talk to you later. Thank you. Bye-bye.